Do you struggle during your interviews?
If you like leadership content or coaching tips to make your job easier, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video.
Hey guys, so wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to interview. You know, I see a lot of people, and my GM see a lot of people come in for interviews. Sometimes they go really well, and sometimes there's opportunities. So just wanted to talk to you real quick about things that you can do, whether it's interviewing in our organization or in whatever field or job that you're looking for. So, you know, you have a better chance of either getting called back for a second interview or actually getting hired. You know, things that will make you stand out. The first tip I have for you is master your elevator pitch. You know, be ready to answer the question, tell me about yourself. You know, who you are, what you do, you know, and why you're a good fit. Again, this is your time to stand out. So give them all your accomplishments, you know, your skills, quick 30, 60 seconds about yourself and what you can do to benefit or bring value to their organization. So this is your chance. So that's tip number one. Prepare a resume and bring multiple copies, okay? One if you have to reference, and one to give to your, you know, to your interviewer, you know, and come with stories, things that you've done in your other career or with your other job, things that you've solved, a time you led a team, a mistake you learned from, a success that you're proud of. Again, this is your opportunity to shine, to stand out. Use the STAR method. Situation, talk about the situation and task, what action you took, and what was the result. Do that, and you will stand out from the rest, okay? So that's tip number two. Tip number three, dress and act the part. Dress professional. Even if the job is casual, you always should dress one level up. So if it's a casual attire at the business you're applying, you know, pick it up, you know? You always want to give a good impression. You know, make eye contact, firm handshake, you know, smile, confident posture. You know, confidence equals perfect preparation and body language. That's tip number three. Tip number four, practice common questions. Again, practice answers for tell me about yourself. Why should I hire you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Have answers for those. Practice out loud. Say it in front of a mirror. You know, if you're driving to the interview, you know, read it out loud while you're driving. Just practice. Get it in your head. You know, you don't want to read it off your resume. You want to have it prepared so you sound natural. So that's tip number four. Tip number five, ask smart questions. You know, have 2 to 3, maybe 4 questions ready. You know, what does success look like in this role? You know, what qualifications does make somebody successful here? You know, what opportunities are there to grow? You know, show some interest. You know, not just how much you pay me. You know, show some interest why you want to work for this company. That is why, or that's how you will stand out. So that's tip number 5. Tip number 6, be early and be ready. 10 to 15 minutes. I would say 15 minutes for sure. You know, be ready. You know, again, have your resume. You know, bring something to write with, preferably a nice notebook, a nice pen. You know, don't bring your Spider-Man notebook from 3rd grade. You know, bring something to take notes on, okay? Again, it's gonna show that you have some interest in the job. You know, that will help you stand out. So that's tip number 6. Tip number 7, be yourself. Be professional. They're hiring a person, not just the resume, right? You know, be positive, respectful, you know, enthusiastic. And not just with the interviewer. You know, you want to be respectful to everybody you meet at that place of business, whether it's the secretary, whether it's somebody walking down the hall. Somebody might say hi to you in the either it's us in my restaurant or it's an office building. You always want to say hi to everybody, you know, because when you leave, they will be asking, hey, did you see so and so? They came in and interviewed. What did you think? Oh no, well, he was very rude to me. You know, you want to impress everybody there. You want to be respectful. You know, can they see themselves working with you? That's how you stand out. So that's tip number 7. tip number 8. You want to be brief. You don't want to just keep on talking and talking. You want to get to the point. Even with your elevator pitch, you want to get to the point. Again, it's 30, 60 seconds. Don't just drag on, okay? So that's tip number 8. Tip number 9, watch your non-verbal communication. If you're staring off, looking down, twirling your fingers, you got a drink and you're just messing with the top while you're talking, you should not carry anything in there to your interview. A pen, messing with a pen. Use it to write down, but you should not be messing with it. It's going to be distracting. They're going to be watching you. I'm going to be watching you. So focus on the interviewer. So that's tip number 9. And then tip number 10, confidence comes from being prepared. The more you prepare, the less you feel nervous. So prepare. Ask somebody to help you. Let them play the interviewer, ask you questions. Just practice. That's what's going to make you. That's going to make you remember the things you want to say. They could give you some feedback on what you can improve. But practice, guys. You got to practice. The better like I said, the more you practice, the better you're going to look. You're going to sound. Maybe they could tell you if you're moving your hands around a lot, if you're not making eye contact. Turn that fear into focus. Okay. So again, that's some tips to have good interviews, whether it's with me or with anybody else, or any industry you're looking for. So my friends, I hope that helps, and good luck in your job hunting.